pulling up. Nobody deal with the bag and talking. Me nothing know we are chilling in an apartment. Hope you don't mind me asking, where will we go? When the quarantine thing done and everybody touch road. Oh, me gonna start pull up in a fast car, yeah.
The Ministry of Education is reporting incremental improvements in the latest PEP results, noting also that the top 10 students have been distributed across 6 schools this cycle, as opposed to the 3 schools which concentrated the top 10 in the previous cycle. Still, the president of the JTA says there are questions to ask about the results, and he's wondering if we're doing the right things to help the students achieve self-actualization at this early level in their educational development. I'll have that conversation with Mark Malaver today on Lead Story regarding the recent PEP results. Welcome to Lead Story on this Monday. This is CVM TV. So the Ministry of Education says it is seeing early signs that what it's been doing in terms of the PEP performances by our students, those things are bearing fruit. It says it has seen incremental improvements in 3 of the 4 subject areas, and even in the one where there was a decline, the decline was only marginal. In case you came in late, you missed all of the news which broke late last week about the results of the most recent PEP. We were kind enough to prepare this for you.
The Ministry of Education has released the results of the 2025 Primary Exit Profile PEP examinations, showing steady academic achievement among students and a reduction in absenteeism across the country. This year, 33,462 students from 964 institutions were registered to sit the national exams. The ministry has reported a 25% decrease in absenteeism, indicating that a higher number of students were present to complete the assessments compared to previous years. A key highlight of this year's results is that 89.5% of students were successfully placed in one of their top 7 school choices. In the area of mathematics, student performance stood at 63% overall, with 56% of students being ranked as proficient and 7% achieving the highly proficient rating. This indicates that while most students have a solid grasp of mathematical concepts, there is still room for improvement in raising more students into the highest performance band. Language arts recorded an overall performance of 69%, with 67% of students ranked as proficient and 2% as highly proficient. In science, 69.97% of students were rated as proficient, which is a slight improvement over the 69.8% recorded in 2024. Meanwhile, social studies saw 71.2% of students being assessed as proficient, which is a slight dip from 71.8% in the previous year. Guided by Senator Dr. Dana Morris Dixon, the Ministry of Education says it remains focused on using data-driven policies and targeted interventions to enhance educational outcomes, viewing the 2025 PEP results as a reflection of resilience and steady progress within the system. With continued collaboration among educators, parents, and communities, the ministry is aiming for 85% proficiency level in all the areas in the years ahead. We discuss on Lead Story.
So, are the results promising enough to cause stakeholders to walk with a pep in their step? After the break, we'll hear from the JTA President-elect.
We love our country, Like you, we take pride in building Jamaica. The resilience of our people is cemented in our products, built to last for generations. Laying the foundation for thriving communities, we're committed to excellence and quality. Quality products, quality relationships. We're all proud Jamaicans, working hard, doing good, building a sustainable future for all. That same unbeatable spirit runs through us. We are made of Jamaica.
Join my private room. Only $1,000 for a grand time.
That I know me. We never said that. But who going to believe me?
That is correct. $4,350,000. Yes, go ahead. $4 million? I never approved that.
Yes, me I go doctor tomorrow. So me have to get the money today, no longer. Then no me face that. We never make no record or beg nobody no money.
Deepfakes are AI-generated images and videos made to look and sound like people we know and trust. They're used to spread misinformation, destroy reputations, and are used to commit fraud and scams. Don't fall victim to deepfakes. Protect yourself. For more information, visit broadcastingcommission.org or scan the QR code on screen.
Mark Malaver is the president-elect of the Jamaica Teachers Association, set to take office in August this year when the incumbent Dr. Mark Smith, his term runs its course. So Mark, of course, is in place effectively, just getting a handle on all the things he needs to do by the time he takes office officially. Among the things he has been doing is observing the results of the recent PEP exams, and he has a perspective about what the results are suggesting about this generation of students who are coming through the primary system into the secondary course of things where the education continuum is concerned. He joins me this evening. Good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening. Good evening to your listeners.
Thank you very much. All right. How should we, from your perspective, interpret the results from these PEP exams as presented by the Education Ministry?
Well, based on what you have just announced, certainly from where I sit, there have indeed been some improvements based on the language of the presentation. Yeah. When you look at it, there has been incremental improvement. There has been incremental growth overall. What we are not seeing, however, are two things. One, what percentage of the students that are leaving, that would have done PEP, that are leaving primary school, that are going over into the high school, what percentage of them are not at the level that they ought to be in terms of literacy and numeracy? Where are these students going? And what steps are being taken by the ministry to ensure that they are given the level of support that needs to be given in these schools? Yeah? That's where we ought to go, because let's be mindful of something. The PEP exam is really a placement exam. So it's not necessarily an exam in and of itself that measures the extent to which students have learned, that measures the extent to which the students are at the level that they ought to be. In essence, what it does, it places the students in their schools of choice, 1 to 7. Yeah. So the way the ministry have spoken about it, it is saying some 90% of the students have gotten their school of choice, 1 of 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the reality. But how many of our students have gotten their first choice or their second choice or their third choice? Those are some questions that we really need to ask.
All right. Hold on. You've said a lot there. I want to just wade through so that we don't lose anything on the cutting table. Mm-hmm. We can have the audience understand us. The first question, the first concern you raise, has to do with the level of numeracy and literacy of those making the transition. And I would say to you, that that's a very, very important question to ask about the level of numeracy and literacy. However, in my view, I don't know if PEP proposes to give you an accurate measure of that beyond giving you a sense of where the students' performance are likely to send them for, well, not even likely, where the students' performance is sending them for high school. So am I hearing you say that one of the components you want built into PEP is this report card, this proof of numeracy, proof of literacy to accompany the child out of primary school? Because as the exam is structured now, it's not designed to do that. Are you calling for that design to be put in?
Yeah, to some extent, because let's be mindful of it does capture some aspects of it. In my view, when you look at the profile, you see certain things. However, it does not go in depth enough. And from where I sit, there needs to be a far more detailed analysis of each student that follows them into the high school setting. Let's also be mindful of something. My brother, that another component of it, another layer of it, is what we call special needs education. Yeah, we are finding more and more of our students making the transition into high school that are really special needs students, and these students are being discovered in the system.
Yes.
Yeah. That is another issue in and of itself. You know?
Yes.
That is even separate from this.
Yes, stay right here. So you remember, each student is judged based on a continuum. That's the difference between PEP and which the thing I took, which was common entrance, and of course, common entrance is successor GSAT, a progressive assessment. But here's the thing. I can look at the PEP numbers and see how many students performed a certain way at the beginner levels in math, language arts, social studies, and science. So I can make a guess as to their numeracy and literacy levels. I'm saying to you that the component to build in perhaps would make it clear, give each student a mark to come out of the primary school system, so that coming in, everybody is aware of exactly which numeracy and literacy level this student is at, rather than having to go and review their performance of continuum from grade 4 forward to get a handle on where the student is numerate speaking and literate speaking. I'm saying if that's something that you want to be very, very clear, even as we look at the PEP results yearly.
Yeah, it is something that that certainly would go far away in helping.
Very well. All right. In terms of the special needs students now, JTA President-elect, you make a good argument, because clearly, in my view, well, not clearly, in my view, some of the students that are passed over to secondary schools teachers to do God knows what with them when they come to them at that level of numeracy and literacy, it would appear to me as if these are special needs cases that the schools weren't prepared for. So you're a principal of a school. How does the education minister then prepare people like yourself to take in a cohort of grade 7 students who have these special needs that have not been addressed at primary school, but which you will then have to fix as their secondary school principal?
Well, I have had the experience where I literally we literally just discovered a student with special needs.
You found out, by the way?
We found out, by the way, the data did not come with him. I would imagine that by now the Ministry of Education would have tightened the screws a little bit to ensure that students who have special needs, that something goes with them to the high school. Bearing in mind, though, that not all high schools are necessarily equipped to treat with special needs. So in my mind, the ministry need to prepare the land before the child comes in. Yeah. If these things are discovered in the system, then oftentimes the schools are not equipped with the human resources, with the technological resources, or even the physical resources to treat with these students.
And here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm with you here. So you're saying, rather than, and I use this example all the time, Father Clark at Holy Trinity, the principal there, who said that he discovered the literacy level of a grade 7 cohort, maybe 2 years ago, when he administered an entrance exam and found out where people were reading. I'm saying, Principal, President-elect, that rather than doing an entrance exam to find out, if a receiving principal at secondary school administers an assessment exam, it is to confirm that which the ministry is sending the child with, so that he...
I am glad you raised that point, because what we are discovering when we do our own diagnostic tests, there is a disconnect between what the data from the ministry that the ministry sends and the data that we find when we administer the diagnostic test. We are finding a huge disconnect with that, and as such, many schools have to know plan accordingly based on the data that they have and not necessarily the ministry's data.
Yes. And that's the thing, because as you've said, you manage a school plant, you manage the whole process. You need to know what are the resources you are going to need from before September morning, based on the quality of the students that you got from the ministry, and what you will have to do to fix them up to survive first form grade 7.
Absolutely, because let's face it, those schools, based on the PEP results, the cream goes to certain schools.
And they'll be fine. They'll be fine. You don't need to worry about them. Yes.
And they'll be fine. But there's a huge chunk of students that are not where they ought to be, that requires necessary intervention, that requires necessary attention, that requires necessary resources that many schools just don't have.
Hear you on that. Hold that point, President-elect. We have to take the break and come right back. I think this is something that the ministry ought to prioritize, the information, a profile on the student coming in. What level of numeracy and literacy is that child at? They should go to the secondary school with that very, very clear, so that the receiving principals know exactly what they're working with, even before they administer their own diagnostics, to see if what the ministry says about the profile of the child is indeed correct. The JTA President-elect and I agree on that. More after the break.
At Hawkeye, we work hard to develop state-of-the-art security solutions like our new Total Connect smart home automation system that gives you 24/7 access to control your appliances, lights, cameras, and doors using your smartphone, tablet, or PC. As the most trusted electronic security company in Jamaica, Hawkeye has the fastest response times to get to you when you need us most. Trust Hawkeye's Total Connect. Hawkeye, securing what matters most.
Millions of people are attacked by harmful mouth bacteria. The root cause of bad breath, gum problems, cavities, plaque, and tartar. That's why Colgate combined the best science and technology in Colgate Total. Unlike others, its superior formula fights bacteria and creates a powerful protective barrier for up to 24 hours to prevent them from coming back. Take control of your oral health with Colgate Total.
The gateway for Jamaica's athletes to several international competitions, including the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, Japan, opens from Thursday, June 26 to Sunday, June 29 for the J3A Junior and Senior National Championships at the National Stadium, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. each day. Admission, finish area season ticket, $8,000. Daily, $1,000 to $3,000. Regular grandstand season ticket, $6,500. Daily, $1,000 to $2,500. Tickets go on sale at MysticOnlineTix.com. Starting June 11, Pegasus Hotel and the Stadium Ticket Office. Starting Monday, June 23. The action will be sizzling.
Back with us here on Lead Story, looking at the recent PEP results with the President-elect of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mark Malaver. He's the principal of Yallis High School. And from the numbers presented by the Education Ministry last week when they released these PEP numbers, mathematics, 3% of the number of students who sat the PEP exams or completed the course of PEP, they were at the beginner's level. 3% were at the beginner's level. 34% at the developing level, 56% ranked proficient, and 7% were highly proficient, creme de la creme. For science, 2% were assessed to be at the beginner's level, 28% at the developing level, 61% of those who sat science were deemed to be proficient, and 9% were deemed to be highly proficient, creme de la creme for science, 9%. For social studies, 14% were assessed to be highly proficient, 58% proficient, 27% developing, and 1% at the beginner's level. And for language arts, 2%, only 2% were deemed to be highly proficient, 67% proficient, 23% developing, and 8% language arts were deemed to be a beginning. The ministry has a national minimum proficiency target of 85% by 2030. President-elect JTA Mark Malaver, based on these numbers, where we are coming from, and the interventions at various levels of the PEP, are you as confident as the ministry and the minister that we are on track to hit 85% proficiency in 5 years' time by 2030?
For me, the jury is still out. I am not seeing what I'm not seeing are the steps that we are taking as a country to get there. I hear the targets. I hear what is being said. I am not seeing the roadmap as it. So I have an issue with that. I want to see the roadmap. I want to see what the steps are being taken. And I want to see how the schools are being resourced at the primary school.
Well, I can tell you this. The minister will say to you, well, look, in grade 4, for those who sat PEP ultimately in grade 6, in grade 4, 25.5% of them were adjudged to have been at the beginning stage, meaning they were very basic in math. But by grade 6 this year, only 3% of them were at beginners. So they reduced the beginners stage level by 22.2 percentage points. And for language arts, the movement is the same. So that's the strength based on the numbers here in that statement that the ministry issued last week, President-elect. She's saying that based on this kind of improvement and the targeted interventions that brought these improvements to bear, by 2030, 85% should be well within reach, is her reasoning.
Yeah, I understand that logic. My experience on the ground tells me a different story. Again, in many instances, in many schools, when we administer our diagnostic testing on the ground, it tells a completely different picture. It is why, for example, you see at a Pembroke Hall, a 70% of the students at grade 7 reading below their level. I am saying to you as well, George, that there are many Pembroke High schools in the system. Yeah? There are some realities that are happening on the ground that sometimes I believe that there's a disconnect between what is happening at what he was circling saying and the realities that are taking place on the ground. There is that disconnect.
So you are so uniquely placed, Principal Malava. What is the agent for this disconnect between the bureaucracy at Hero Circle and the reality of schools and school managers around the island?
I think sometimes, put it this way, many battles have been lost because the generals refuse to listen to the ground commanders. Yeah? And I think sometimes the ministry has been tone deaf to some of the issues that are plaguing our institutions on the ground. Yes, I hear the data, but I also believe that we could be miles ahead if it is that the ministry was listening to what we are saying on the ground.
What is the biggest thing the ministry is not listening to?
There are a couple of things that I believe is fundamental to transformation, certainly at the primary school, at the early childhood. I think we definitely need to fix early childhood, and we need to stop giving lip service to fixing it and taking the necessary steps to fix it. I also believe that the early childhood need to be properly resourced, and the most qualified set of teachers be placed in there. And let me go back up. Qualified teachers are attracted to go into early childhood. Yeah, and I believe that if you provide that level of building block, you transition over into primary school, you fix the infrastructure, you put in the nutritional programs, you have high quality teachers inside there, well resourced. Then we'll start to see the results. What I am seeing, George, is that many of the interventions that are taking place on the back end. And that is creating a backlog into our system.
So this last question for you before we go, because we're almost out of time. Is it your belief then, President-elect JTA, that there are not enough resources in education, or is it your belief that the resources available are not being allocated properly?
I think it's a combination of the two. There are some programs that I believe that the ministry has implemented that I believe would have been better served if that money was channeled into early childhood and primary education. Yeah. I also believe that, when you look at the Patterson report and what the Patterson report is saying, quite frankly, we never needed a Patterson report to tell us all those things, because the principals, the teachers have been saying many of these things a long time ago. What we need, infrastructural improvement. We need resources. We need highly qualified, motivated teachers.
Well, at least we know what your mandate will attempt to achieve over the course of your term as JTA president. That is clear based on what you're saying to me this evening.
Yes, certainly.
Hear you on that. Thank you for your time. Mark Malavra, we'll talk again. All the best.
In respect, George.
Good. That's the President-elect of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mark Malavra. President-elect, of course, is someone who has been elected to office, but who hasn't started serving their term yet. And so he's the President-elect. Dr. Mark Smith, outstanding principal at Monroe College. He will demit office in August, at which point Mark Malavra will take over and begin serving out his term, his one-year term as JTA president. It's really a 2-year term, because as president-elect you get into office, and then when your term officially starts, you start signing all the checks and stamping all the forms and doing all the things and making all the noise in agitation. But yeah, that's what he is set to do, and his work is cut out for him from the JTA's perspective. That's my time on this Monday. I make way for the news at 7.